Welcome to Book Huddle. I'm your host, Karen Reader with Readgab, and today our guest is Stuart Gibbs. He is the author of 40 some odd books, and
Yes.
I'm thrilled to have him today. I have been aware of Stuart Gibbs writing for years and years, but I don't know why. I have not picked up a Stuart Gibbs book, and so when I saw this FunJungle All Ears come out, and I was especially familiar with Spy School, but I saw this and I was like, it's about time that I read a Stuart Gibbs book. So I got on it and then I read it and I was like, it's about time that I read a lot more Stuart Gibbs books. So I'm just excited to have you join us today. Before we get started talking about your books, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself separate from being an author.
Oh yeah. Okay. My name is Stuart Gibbs. I am one of those authors who's loved writing as long as I could read. So from the very beginning, I do not really recall a time when I didn't like reading. But I also, as you'll find out, I have always had a real fascination with animals, and I like being outdoors a lot. So throughout a lot of my life, I've tried to combine those two things and go outdoors to places where I can see animals. So I'm sort of on this great quest to see all of what we call the great charismatic megafauna in the world and their natural habitats. That charismatic means megafauna are just really big animals. We always like really big animals. So elephants and giraffes and whales and polar bears and walruses. I'm trying to see all of them where they actually live.
That is so awesome. So you've been out on safari, right? You've
Yes,
been
yes,
in
yes. I've been a
natural
couple
habitat.
times on safari. Yeah, yeah. And then there are places like, we think of safari as Africa, but there are obviously places you can go all around the world. Even in the United States, there are places where you can sort of go on an American safari, like up in Alaska or Monterey Bay or
Oh yeah.
Yellowstone. So there are some great places like that.
So I love to do an author icebreaker and base it on a children's book. So we're going to do the from the mixed up. I always trip over this title, and I'm
It's a tough
on from the Mixed Up Files blog as one of the
one. Okay.
creators. You'd think I'd get it right. From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Frank
Basil E. Frankel.
Basil E.
Yeah,
Frankel.
yeah,
Yes, I knew I
yeah,
would mess
yeah,
it up every time
yeah,
because one day I said it wrong, and now
yeah.
hereafter forever I do. So Claudia runs away in the book and she goes and stays in a museum. That's the perfect place for her to stay hidden on her runaway adventure. If you were to run away, where would you run away to, Stuart?
Again, probably not a surprise given what I write about, but I have always been fascinated by zoos and the idea that like I thought every kid always wanted to go to the zoo every day. That was what I thought as but that was what I wanted to do. And we go to the zoo, and I wouldn't want to leave. And so there was this part of me that was like, what if I could just stay here? What if I could just sneak away and go
Thinking back.
live someplace behind the scenes, come out, see the animals whenever I want to? So my hero of FunJungle was basically living the life that I always sort of dreamed about as a kid.
That is so awesome. And I understand when I read the author's note that elephants, that's your favorite, right?
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah. Not only are they about as mega as megafauna can get, they're the biggest
Yes.
large land animal there are, but there's so much more to them that they're very intelligent. They have these amazing emotional connections with each other. They get excited when they see friends and family members they haven't seen in a while. If an elephant dies in their family, they will remember where that elephant died. And when they come across the bones of that elephant, they will really stop and sort of run their trunks over the bones.
Oh, I
Uh,
remember.
yeah, and then just how they're constructed. They have these enormous bodies, then they need this giant nose because to reach all the ground because
So
their hands
unique.
are so big. Yes, yes. There's 40,000 muscles in the trunk of an elephant. We have
That's
like far less than 1,000 in our own bodies, and so elephants have like 40 to 80 times more muscles than we have just in their nose
your
than we have in
nose.
our body. Yeah.
That's incredible. So much to learn about them, right? And so, but it took nine. Are we on the ninth book with all
Yes,
English,
yes. Well,
right?
ninth book. Yeah, yeah.
So it took nine books for you to get there. So,
Yeah, yeah. The elements show up. There's kind of a little subplot involving them in Big Game, which is the third book in the series. And I kind of, I guess, thought like for a while, like, oh, okay, I didn't. But then I was like, no, 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 no. They need their own book, and
yes,
so once I finally had the idea for what would work as a mystery involving elephants, then I was like, okay, it's time.
this is it. You knew it when
Yeah.
you had it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It was
Right. Yeah.
better to wait until you had that idea. So that
Absolutely.
it's
Yes.
perfect,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. So give us a little elevator pitch for those who have never heard of the Fun Jungle series, maybe a little bit about what Fun Jungle's about, and then specifically All Ears.
Sure. Okay. So the FunJungle series is a mystery series that, for the most part, takes place in a zoo. Now, it's not a real zoo because I didn't want to say that all these things could go wrong in a real zoo. So it takes place at a place called FunJungle, which is sort of a corporatized zoo. It's a zoo slash theme park. There are rides, as have the most innovative animal exhibits in the world. And so it's this massive tourist attraction in the Texas Hill Country. But because of how it's run, there have been some things that have gone wrong that wouldn't go wrong at normal zoos. And there's a kid named Teddy Fitzroy. Both of his parents work at FunJungle, so he lives in employee housing there. And he has this lifelong fascination with animals himself. And so he has this knowledge about animals many other people don't really have. And when these crimes occur there, he has gotten involved in solving these crimes. And as the series has gone on, not everything has happened at FunJungle. Sometimes it's happened near FunJungle. Sometimes it's happened at some other places around the world. But the crimes are always sort of about animals or the environment and what people do to those things.
So then we have the elephants. One of
Oh,
them
right. Yes.
gets lost.
So that's the setup for FunJungle. And all ears, I discovered at some point that not only zoos have elephants in this country, there's still a few places where people actually own their own elephants, which seemed kind of startling to me.
Right.
That was another dream of mine as a kid, own an elephant. So these people were getting to do what I'd always wanted to do. So I reached out to some of these people and I visited the places where they own these elephants privately. And I just started thinking, what would happen if those elephants escaped? And so that's kind of the idea is that some elephants, private herd of elephants escapes during a blackout. When they manage to round all the elephants up and count them up, they're one elephant short.
Right.
And nobody knows what happened to it. And Teddy gets called in to basically try and figure out what has happened to this missing elephant.
I love it. And I loved it from the get-go. You know, sometimes you've got to give some background information and set the scene. And some books we just jump right in. And we jumped right in All Ears. And it was so ridiculously fun because we're dealing with deer urine of all
Yes.
things,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
tell me how do you come up with your ideas? What made you think, okay, and then I'm gonna have deer urine be a major part of this introduction?
You know, I actually kind of had a lot of the plot worked out. You know, when the series first starts, Teddy is not really known as a detective. He sort of ends up falling into this, but as time has gone on, he's sort of started like he's become known that for being able to solve crimes, and but they're always kind of weird crimes again that have to do with animals. And I was honestly, if I have to drive from one place to another, there's certainly a lot of podcasts out there in the world, and I have this one in particular I like to listen to called "The Economics of Everyday Things," and they did a little report on the deer urine business. And the moment I was like, deer, wait, I got to learn more about this thing,
About animals?
and right, yes, right, animals. Right, and now just so you guys know, the urine is used for making deer lure, which is to attract deer for that's what hunters are trying to do.
Yes.
But there's also sort of a urine business of trying to repel animals too by
Mhm.
collecting like coyote urine, things like that. But the fact that the deer urine business is surprisingly profitable, and the moment I heard this, I was like, yes, that combines animals, it combines bodily fluids, big part of appealing to
Right.
young
Yes.
readers.
Kids want to read about
Science, so
bodily
it's
fluids.
okay, right? Yes, yes. I mean,
Yes.
I can talk about if it's scientific, it's absolutely scientific.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it
So
was,
that sparked that. I go down this rabbit hole doing research into that, and then I got a whole scene involving a theft of some deer urine.
yes. Yeah, immediately I thought of my boys and I was like, all right, this is a read aloud. We just need to go and start the series because I can just feel that the humor is going to be there throughout, right? And I enjoyed that too, that I could read book 9 and not feel completely lost.
Right.
Because I was on a panel judging books last year and I did not even know it was a second book in the series when I picked it up. And I was so confused. And it made a whole lot more sense when I realized it was the second book. But I was like, that's where I'm missing something. But I was able to read your book with
I
having
really try to write this series so that everybody can be
yes.
up to speed on. You don't have to have read the previous ones. You
Yeah.
can really pick any book up and read the one that appeals to you the most.
Yes. But I got the premise of what the previous books were about without getting lost and bogged down in a lot of, okay, this is getting boring that you're having to explain, what's been going on. Like it was just a quick little sentence here and there. And I was like, okay, I get what's going on. We're good. We're good.
Excellent.
And it just So much fun. I love the mystery. Did you know? Because Spy School has mystery elements going
Yeah.
on as well. So did you know you always wanted to do mystery? What led you to writing mystery?
I mean, I always loved reading them. And, like we were talking about, Mixed Up Files of Miss Basil Frankwell are great mystery. Because like you read these stories like that. I mean, I remember reading the reveal of
Yes.
what of that solve in that book. Reading it in fourth grade, I remember reading that as well as I remember like doing things like like playing a soccer game or traveling somewhere. I remember that moment of and that's a pretty special thing that mysteries have in it. They have these aha moments where maybe you're surprised, maybe you're like, oh, I figured it out. Maybe you're like, why didn't I figure it out? Which is that's not necessarily in that many other forms of literature. Which is not to say those other
Yeah,
forms, those other genres aren't as good, but there's something to mystery
having
that is
that
really compelling that way.
victory moment.
Right, they're very interactive, right? You're matching
Yes.
with, you're trying to solve it. Like as I'm writing it, I'm trying to fool people. I don't care if somebody solves it as long as they solve it right.
Right.
Guessing doesn't count. You can't be like, "Oh, I guessed it was that."
I-
It's like
Yeah.
I figured out it was that person, right? So that I'm trying to put all the clues in there. So I always
Without making
liked
it too obvious and
exactly, exactly. So I loved reading them, and I didn't really say like I'm going to set out to do mysteries, but they're just such a great framework for a story. So I really wanted to do something set at a zoo
okay.
because again, I liked animals. I was studying biology in college. I was working at a zoo.
Very
I was
cool.
doing research there. I saw the zoo operate behind the scenes. I thought, okay, great setting. And then as I worked on what I could do there, I just kind of kept coming back to this mystery idea, and that just sort of has gone. That's happened repeatedly in things. In I have the Moon Base Alpha series. That was I was just like, I'm going to do something set on the moon, and it turned into a mystery. So that mystery framework is a great framework for exploring a setting.
Yes.
Again, it has that interactiveness to it that you're really playing a game. As a reader, you're playing a game against the author. As an author, I'm playing a game
Yeah.
against the reader. Yeah.
So are you thinking that far ahead as you write it? Are you an outliner that you
Yes. Oh
are?
yeah. Yes. Yes. Big outliner. When I was young, I really don't think a whole lot of kids outline when they're young. It seems like a lot
Yes.
of work. I actually worked in the film business and TV business where they make you outline. You really have to outline, and then you realize that you just learn all this structure there. And so in writing books, I know there are people out there who do not outline
Answers.
their mysteries
Yes.
before they write them. Some people have written some great mysteries like that. I don't know how they do it. I
Right.
have got to like map it out before I have to know who did it. I have to know how they did it. I have
Yes.
to know the clues before I start writing.
Well, and I've discovered so much that as I'm reading something, you're only given so many words. So we're not going to have some little side note there for no reason. Things are going to all come together and fit together. And so a lot of times when I read mysteries, I'm like, why didn't I see it? Because the pieces they have to fit. And when there's overlapping stories, there's usually a reason for an overlapping story. And so, yeah, it kind of surprised me in the end that I was like, I thought I knew where that was going. Why didn't I see it?
Right. Well, that's right. Well, that's what we're going for
That's the
as
goal.
writers. And but I love when it happens to me when I'm reading something. So
Yes,
so there's a lot of great mystery writers out there, and I can still learn from reading all of them.
absolutely. And it's fun both. Like it's fun to have that it's like, oh, so cool. I didn't see that coming because you don't want to always predict. But sometimes those predictions are like so satisfactory that it's like, yes, I got it.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I don't mind if you pick up on it and you get it. I'm great, but I'm really trying to get you to the end to be
Yes.
like, oh, I didn't see it. Oh man, I should have seen it.
Yeah, I like almost forgot about the other story that was going on here, even though it was there like the whole time. Yes. So when you're writing, I love the theme of this, and I'm getting the feeling that it was probably an issue with big game, and you're writing about big things, about, climate and the way we treat animals and things like that throughout. But the theme that I want to talk about is Teddy encounters different people and that have different views than him. And
Mm,
he's able to treat them with respect, regardless of them having different views. And even as he goes along, generally he's able to be unbiased towards them in his work. I mean, sometimes I think a little bit of bias comes in because, he feels passionately. But I feel like Teddy's a hero kind of character that is able to take something and let there be gray areas and be could treat other people with respect, regardless of belief. Did that flow in naturally? Is that what you were going for?
It's definitely something I'm going for because I think there's a lot of things that people butt heads over, and there's no real way to get to any kind of consensus without like recognizing those people are actually probably not that different from
Yes.
you. And so there are things like Teddy encounters people run an exotic game ranch in the book. And, I love animals. I'm not a hunter. I don't like the idea of hunting, but I grew up in Texas and I was surrounded by hunters. And so, I've met hunters. I've actually, agreed to go out on a hunting trip
Okay.
with people to see what it's like. And, I think when you do that, you kind of, it's like I think there's this thought of like people and say like, oh, I love animals, therefore anybody who hunts animals is evil. And you have to be like, no, they're not really, right? And so there's lots of nuances like that out there in the world. There's a whole thing in this book about habitat destruction, right? And the kids are very upset about it, and that's very personal because that like I was a kid growing up in Texas, watched all sorts of woods get torn down, and the thing, like if you go to kids and say like, hey, is it good to tear down woods? Everybody says no, and then you say, okay, where do you live, right?
Yeah,
What was there before you lived there? What was
exactly.
where
Yeah.
your school was before you lived there? And sort of pointing out to people like it's not that simple, right? We all don't want the woods we love torn down, but we also want a place to live, and we want like a place to go, out to dinner, and we want theme parks and zoos and things like that.
Yes, and the alternate energy. Well, to
Right,
my daughter,
yes,
where do you want me to build this wind farm?
right, yes, exactly. So there's these things, and I think when people they come in and say like, okay, I care about clean energy, or I care about this, like I care about clean energy a lot, but I also recognize that like it has to go somewhere,
Right.
and so you have to be ready to say, okay, there's not one solution that's going to be 100% sure,
Yes.
like exactly the way I want it to be, and then everybody else is totally going to agree with that, right? You're going to have to figure out some way to compromise and to get anything done. And I think when people sit there and say, no, I'm here and I'm not going to compromise, then they have to realize like it can't work.
Right.
You have to work with people to get things done.
Yeah. How are we going to go forward, right?
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah,
how are we ever going to have conversations as adults, which so many adults are unable to do this, where they
right,
can have conversations and have civility in whether it's local disagreements
right,
or
right.
large scale political disagreements.
Yeah,
And so the perfect place to learn this is as children to
yeah,
disagree about
yeah,
things. And the perfect place to
yeah,
set up the scene is in a book that you can enjoy and is funny and exciting. And
yeah. And look, I mean, I'll say like I've learned things from kids because here's one of the amazing things about kids is there's a lot of antagonism like online, right? It makes it very easy to be antagonistic. That somebody posts something you don't like and you just kind of go like blah,
right,
like I don't
right,
agree with you, but you don't know that person. You don't
right.
you, uh, but kids will write and say, they'll write an email and say like, I just want you to know, like, I like this that you did, or I learned this, or
Oh,
this made me happy, or whatever. And then you think that's a great thing, right? Like, why? I mean, yes, people do that. Sometimes somebody puts something they like, put hearts on there, great. But there is something about reaching out to people and recognizing that kids did this. I was like, you know what? I should start doing that too. I should actually start.
express
If
that
I read a book that I
appreciation,
like, I should reach out
knowledge.
to the
Yeah,
writer or something
cool.
and say like, I really appreciate that you did this.
That's cool. Have you ever had an unexpected something that the kid said, "Hey, I really appreciated you this," and I didn't even realize that was in the book or that takeaway was there.
I mean, I think there's, I do get from kids like, oh, I, pick up stuff about like, right, again, how to treat other people or something
Yes.
that they'll be happy about. But I do hear from kids saying like, oh, I want to be a scientist because of your books, or I know for a fact that there are at least three CIA agents who became CIA agents because of the Spy School series.
That's
So
really cool.
that made them realize they could have this career. So there is some kind of fun stuff now as my readers have gotten old enough to like actually have jobs and things that
Yeah,
people
that
then
is
say
so
like,
fun.
your book
Kids
made that difference in my life. Yeah.
have had your readers grow up.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, what advice do you give for whether it's a parent, teacher, or librarian that is trying to teach their child to have respect for somebody else, to have respectful conversations? What would you tell that adult?
I mean, I think you're just letting the kids know that even if somebody doesn't seem to have the same opinion with you on something like that, again, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. And if you can sort of engage that, the more you're willing to talk to them about like, well, why do you think that? Then you can actually kind of see who they are, and so like I mean, sometimes people write to me and they will say like, I don't know why why did you do this?
Right.
And it can come out very antagonistic to them. But often I will try and write back and say like, here, I'm going to lay out, this is why I chose to do this. And sometimes a lot of the time I don't hear from those people again, but
Right.
sometimes I actually will hear from someone who says like, oh, thank you very much for
Oh, nice.
answering that. And, now I get it and I can see this and I can see your point and, you can see my point and what have you. And, so I think there's something to like somebody could do something that upsets you and your immediate response is sort of get your
Yeah.
hackles up and be like, okay, I'm going to go in fighting and and going aggressively. But if you actually sort of take that step back and go like, okay, I want to talk this through. Also, I mean, I have to say, like, I do think like texting and emailing, which are very effective, but talking to people is very different than writing. If
Yes.
you text somebody, you write somebody, that's a one-way bit of conversation. It's very hard to get the nuance of what's going on. Whereas if you actually approach somebody and talk to them, it can be very like the moment you think, oh, this person kind of misunderstood what I was saying, you can correct it, right? And so, oh, no, that's not what I was saying at all. I'm sorry if you got that idea. This is what I was trying to say.
Right.
And yet, if you're texting back and forth, somebody will be like, oh, yeah. I mean, like the whole idea that like if you put a period at the end of a text, sometimes people say that was very curt. It needs an exclamation point, and you're like, and you
People are
just
using
change it.
caps. Why are you yelling at me?
Yes, yes, exactly. You
Yes.
say like where it's not very nuanced and it's
Right.
very hard to get exactly what somebody's saying as opposed to so I have a whole thing where like if I'm like three emails in with somebody, I'll be like, can we just call each other and talk
Yes.
about this? Yeah.
I,
And I think
it takes so much less time to just
yes,
talk. Like a
yes,
lot of times people want to text or email because it's quicker, but
right.
sometimes it's like, do you know what? This could be just done so much
Yes,
quicker
yes,
if we could just
yes,
talk.
yes. I think of my
So,
friends of this joke because they know like if once I hit like a certain number of texts, I will just start calling them and they'll be like,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like, okay, you reached your text limit. I'm like, yes, I did.
It's time for a
Time
phone
to talk
call.
this through. Yes.
And kids are so used to like short answers and quick, and you've got to satisfy me quickly.
Right.
So, how great to say, all right, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk. You're going to
Yes.
talk to two people and interact and maybe even make them play the devil's advocate. Okay, you're for animal rights. Yeah, actually, J versus K comes out, I believe, the same day as yours, Jerry Craft and
Yes.
Tommy
Yes. Yes.
Alexander.
Yes. Yes. I
And
know. I
now
know. Well, that's coming out against my book.
oh,
Yes.
geez. No,
Yeah.
but it's
I know.
fun
I
because that's a big thing is, oh, I love animals too. I love to eat them. And then the other one
know.
is all about just vegan and everything. And so, you could introduce both books having simple conversations.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Right.
And because I love that, like they have a huge thing about respecting each other too. And so right there to have kids have to be like, okay, what if you didn't eat meat though? What would
Right.
your argument be? What if you didn't hunt? I remember it's been years ago though, but this 12-year-old girl had been, maybe you remember it in the news, she had been safari hunting and there was a picture shown of her with her kill
Right.
and
Yeah.
just people were treating them terribly all over the internet.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's like, okay, imagine you're that person and react now. Imagine that you're the other side than what you think, and how do you talk to this person?
Right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's right. That's the thing is right. Somebody puts a picture of it, somebody does something, and yes, it's out there for everybody to see, but they're not planning on it going viral, and then people get, so upset about it, and you go like, look, I get it. You don't like hunting. I don't like hunting, but to be upset at these people, because one of the first things you learn when you really start going down the conservation rabbit hole is that the first conservationists were hunters. Ducks Unlimited was like one of the first big conservation groups, because hunters do not want all the animals to be
Right.
gone. They don't want to kill
Yes.
all of them. They want some of them. So there's this idea that if you
Otherwise, they can't hunt anymore. Yeah.
yes, if you actually want to, like you look for those commonalities, right? I'm not crazy about you hunting, but we have the same goal, which is make sure there's still animals, there's still wild places. So maybe we go from there and see what we can do.
Like
But,
that.
but look, I'm a big environmentalist, and I do like meat, right? So there are these nuances of all of
Yes.
this, right? So
So you
yeah, so I'm
can
sure there are
even
people out there.
find something that it's like, oh, there might be an environmentalist that is so vegan. So
Right,
maybe I
yes.
can understand, having to defend myself on that point.
Right. Yes,
So
exactly. So
yeah,
so
that's
so we all,
different
have
levels.
our levels of what we're willing to do. And yes.
Right.
That said, I'm not gonna say there's nobody in the book who they don't go, wow, that person is just a jerk, and that
Yes.
person remains a jerk throughout the whole book. But
And sometimes there just are straight up.
yeah, sometimes there are some people out there, but generally those people sort of signal very well. I mean, like
Yes.
one of the other things, there's a lot of bullies in the world, and
Right.
not all of them are in high school, right? There's some
Yeah.
adults who come in, and you uh, how they deal with them is also an issue. But yeah, I mean, so I'm not going to say there's everybody gets away scot-free in
Right.
this book. I do try to say like, oh look, there's people who are not what you think they are.
Right. And that can be a powerful thing to find commonality and just taking the first step of being willing to talk to somebody that you disagree with. Because I've seen that a lot on both sides where somebody says, I don't associate with Republicans. I don't associate with Democrats. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that's an interesting thing. How do you expect to really make any headway in your causes in life?
Right. Yes. Right. You can't do it unless you
Yeah.
talk to them.
Yeah. So that big first steps, talking, being willing to talk, find commonality and respect. And I,
Yeah.
I really love that about the book. It got me excited because I feel like that can be a hard thing to gather from something. Well, something so serious that you were able to be so fun. You know what I mean? Like I said, and then we circled back around to the ridiculousness and the humor. And so it was a joy to read it.
Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Stuart, could you take a second and recommend for us one of your favorite children's books?
Sure, sure. I got it right here. This is Lafcadio, The Lion Who Shot Back by Shel Silverstein. Shel Silverstein, obviously very famous for
Yes.
Light in the Attic and Where the Sidewalk Ends, his poetry, but a lot of people don't know this one.
I do
And
not.
oh yeah,
Is
this
it
one.
poetry or is
No,
it
no, no, no.
story
It's straight
form?
up text,
Is it a picture
illustrated
book?
by Shell. It's got illustrations in it and
Uh-huh.
all. Just this is again going on the environmental theme, and also sort of about how we judge people and not. This is about a lion who after not trusting humans, how they come into the jungle and shoot all lions. He learns to shoot back, and it sort of follows his trend as he sort of the path that this leads him on to meeting humans. And it's very, very funny. It is a book I read over and over and over again when
Awesome.
I was younger, but it does get pretty poignant at the end
Oh,
as well, I think. So yeah, so this is one, but one of those books sort of laid the seeds of my love of animals and my sort of conservationist bent.
and then weaving it in
And
literature.
yes, yes, not really a pro hunting book to be honest, but again, like not all humans are evil, right?
Right, right.
Whereas the lions could come in from that perspective, and so Lafcadio sort of is someone who comes and talks to the other side, let's say.
That is so cool. Okay, that is one that I want to get right away because I love Shel Silverstein and I love the way he writes, but I have no idea
Yeah,
that.
I don't know how this one sort of has slipped under the radar for so many people, but it is such a great book, and if you like his other stuff, it is a very, very funny book
Cool.
that my sister and I both just adored, and
Oh
you know
my gosh.
we
And
did
such a talent to be able to take something so important and a big topic and have fun in the
yeah,
story.
right, yes, right,
So cool.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you so much, Stuart, for taking the time to talk to us today. We'll look forward to your book as this is airing. It is available within the
Yeah.
next couple days.
Yes. Yes.
So go
That,
out and get all
right.
ears and enjoy the Fun Jungle series.
All right. Yes. Yes. Please do. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope that you enjoyed hearing about Fun Jungle All Ears. If you enjoy my podcast, Book Huddle, I would love for you to take a minute and rate and review it on your podcast platform. That will help more people find Book Huddle. Now go and have a fantastic week reading some amazing books.